Coral Crisis Strikes Back by Erika Schwoyer. Nothing can beat the wonderful sights that nature creates. Plants and animals alike can produce amazing, picturesque scenes that dazzle the eyes of any person. One of the most amazing sculptures that is created organically right here on planet Earth is the coral reef. Ridges of rock produced by small communities of coral polyps, coral reefs are gorgeous living ecosystems that contain extravagant colors and intricate sculptures that furnish the ocean floor. Research has proven that coral reefs are vital to the survival of both marine organisms and humans. Sadly, scientists have discovered that coral reefs across the world are dying due to an epidemic known as the coral crisis. The coral crisis is sweeping the sea as climates change and wastewater is increasingly released into the ocean. If we don't act soon, it'll have long-lasting effects on ecosystems above and below the water. Evidence has supported the fact that the release of untreated wastewater into the ocean is a major contributor to the coral crisis. The coral crisis is an issue that affects the environment, and it could be reduced by increasing the amount of wastewater treatment that happens around the world. Many people don't know that a piece of coral is actually a community of small coral polyps, or in other words, small animals. Now, this is a healthy piece of coral, and you can see all the tiny dots that are on the coral. Each of these is an individual little animal. Every coral polyp has tentacles, and in those tentacles, they have algae. This algae is what gives the coral its color. Coral bleaching occurs when corals get stressed out by the change in their environment, whether it be from temperature or pollution in the water or other things like that. And when they get stressed out, they expel that algae, thus losing their color and turning white. This leads to the death of coral reefs because, in addition to being a source of color, this algae is also the coral's source of food and oxygen. When they expel this algae, they are deprived of these things and they die. During a study that was conducted in the Great Barrier Reef, which is the largest collection of coral reefs in the world, divers found up to 50% mortality in this reef due to coral bleaching. To put this into perspective, here are some images of the Great Barrier Reef. You can read the facts behind me. The Great Barrier Reef is the size of 70 million football fields and is home to thousands of different organisms. If reefs like this continue to die off from the coral crisis, it'll have major effects on the lives of the marine organisms that rely on them. In an interview that I conducted with Dr. John Zigliano, who is a biology professor at Cedar Crest College, he stated that when the reefs die, all of the organisms that live there, the fish, urchins, crustaceans, mollusks, etc. will die. Many fish use coral as shelter, feeding grounds, and breeding grounds. When the coral crisis kills these reefs, it decreases the chances of survival of marine organisms. A lot of you may be thinking, oh, they're just fish, or I don't live underwater, so why should I care? Well, I'm going to give you some reasons why you should care. Coral reefs support local economies, provide food and shelter for marine organisms, and support the fishing industry. The National Wildlife Federation estimates that coral reefs contribute over $30 billion a year in direct net benefits to human economies. A great example of this is that, according to the National Geographic, the Great Barrier Reef contributes over $3 billion annually to Australia's economy. The beautiful colors of the reef are a major tourist attraction, so when they go through bleaching and they lose their color, they don't attract as many people. Coral reefs are also a source of food, shelter, and breeding grounds for marine organisms. There are some species of fish that only live in certain coral reefs in certain areas of the world. An example of this is the blue saddle wrasse, which is a fish that can only be found in Hawaiian coral reefs. If the coral reefs in Hawaii die off, then the saddle wrasse will go extinct. The coral crisis is also affecting the fishing industry. The fishing industry provides food and jobs to people all over the world. An article from the National Wildlife Federation states that coral reefs, which cover less than 1% of the ocean floor, are the principal habitat for 25% of the ocean species. According to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, U.S. commercial and recreational fishing generated over $199 billion in sales and provided 1.7 million jobs in 2011. Now that you can see how the coral crisis affects the economy, the environment, and the fishing industry, you can understand why it is such a major issue. We, as human beings, must take charge and find a solution to this epidemic. The solution that I am proposing to be the best is to increase the amount of wastewater treatment that occurs around the world. Now, what is untreated wastewater? You can read the technical definition behind me, but essentially it is raw sewage and any other dirty water that enters the ocean. This water enters the ocean from overflowed storm drains after heavy rain, or from humans who simply don't have access to any or proper sewage treatment. The Caribbean is an example of this. In an article posted by the Nature Conservancy, they said that about 85% of the wastewater entering the sea in the Caribbean is not treated in any way. That same article states that in St. Lucia, only 13% of the population is connected to the sewage system. This means that 87% of the population is pumping raw sewage into the ocean. Think about that next time you want to go on vacation in the Caribbean. If we continue to release this untreated wastewater into the ocean, we are introducing diseases, toxins, viruses, bacteria, and other harmful chemicals into the environment. The most harmful components of this untreated wastewater are excess nutrients, freshwater, heavy metals, and pathogens. According to Nature.org, the most widely recognized pollutant within sewage is the excess nutrients. These nutrients cause an overgrowth of seaweed, which competes with the coral for sunlight and space. Freshwater is also a major stressor on coral reefs. According to Nature.org, although coral's exact tolerance to freshwater is unknown, it's well documented that influxes of freshwater from storms increase reef mortality. The presence of heavy metals and pathogens is also a major factor. According to Justine E. Hosher, it's a toxic cocktail where the different pollutants within sewage interact with each other to make things worse. The heavy metals increase the strength of the pathogens, which makes the corals more susceptible to them. The heavy metals also build up in the skeletons of the corals, which can cause bleaching. For a problem this severe, many solutions have been proposed. One proposed idea was to reduce the chemically enhanced fertilizers that are used around the world. While this would reduce toxic runoff into the ocean, it would also greatly decrease the % yield that farmers collect, which would hurt their income. Another solution proposed by those in the science community is cloud seeding, which is when unmanned vehicles spray tiny droplets of water into clouds to increase their size. While this process is successful in decreasing the temperature of the ocean, it also uses harmful chemicals like iodine and liquid propane, which shouldn't be continually released into the environment. The solution that I am proposing to be the most optimal one is to increase the wastewater treatment that occurs around the world. This solution has the most positive effects while having the least amount of negative effects. In fact, the only argument that could be made against this solution is that it will cost a lot of money. Despite this possible extreme cost, this theory was tested in 2011 in Providence, Rhode Island. There, a wastewater treatment plant was erected along with wind turbines. Through this project, Providence was able to utilize the treatment of wastewater, utilize the electricity from the turbines to power their plant, and on windy days, they were able to use the extra electricity that the turbines created to sell it back to electricity companies for a profit. If this kind of setup were used in regions around the world, those areas would benefit economically and environmentally. In conclusion, the coral crisis is an issue that affects the environment and economies across the globe, and it should not be ignored. One of the biggest things that contributes to this problem is the release of untreated wastewater into our Earth's oceans. This untreated water contains harmful substances that affect the health of coral reefs. If governments across the globe were to implement more wastewater treatment plants in their region, then it may not be too late to try and remedy the already devastating effects that the coral crisis has had on the environment. That's it. Thanks for watching.